Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. I did tweet that I'm struggling a little bit with content for Destiny videos lately compared to everything else going on. It's been nice to kind of branch out a bit, but obviously I wanted to circle back around for the season finale, which, you know, we have half a season to go, but the storyline usually wraps up about midway through, and that is what happened this week. I've been very vocal in how I have liked this season in many ways. That has stemmed from a few different things. I think the two central activities that we got this season are quite good. Some of the best I think we've seen from the seasonal model. I think the card idea was kind of neat. In practice, I don't know how much I really mixed and matched my deck, but I think it was still a neat idea that was different than the little check the boxes upgrades that we get. And the fundamental storyline here, where we were powering up Eris to become a hive god to take on Xivu Arath, that was a pretty badass concept for the season. However, I did not really enjoy the way this ended here. And I wrote an article about this morning, but I wanted to go into it a little bit more. Okay, so the mission itself I thought was perfectly fine. Ever since they showed off that dude who was essentially the dungeon boss of I don't remember the dungeon's name at this point. It's like the dungeon that everyone runs the least. He's pretty much the same guy, and we knew we were going to fight him because he showed up really early in the season. We took a chunk out of his health bar and he left. It seemed pretty obvious to me that he was going to be the bad guy as opposed to Xivu Arath, and that was true. There was a final room that was unlocked this week where you go and you fight him, you do some of the crystal mechanics, and you just burn him down. That is what I'm showing here in the footage. As it turns out, once you beat him, this room opens up as a fourth area that you can play Altars of Sorrow in, so mixing it up a little bit with the different locations. You, at least so far, I haven't seen that you don't fight him again necessarily, but you are, they're rotating in different summonings and things with the different races, so that's pretty interesting. In terms of the actual ending, so it wasn't 100% clear what exactly was going to happen here. I kept picturing in my mind like some sort of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla battle where it's like a giant hive Eris stomping around fighting Xivu Arath now that she's powered up to be a hive god. That didn't happen. So what did happen was this was supposed to be like kind of our last tribute, was this giant, hive knight thing with his fire sword. And then they did pull kind of a left turn where Ikora, for some reason, agreed that they could summon Savathun to this ritual area and she would be resurrected, and then Eris, who was holding a sword, which I thought was suspicious, slices Savathun's throat because that is apparently all it takes to kill her, and then absorbs her power as tribute as well, which makes her the highest power level hive god we've ever seen. And she uses that power to crush a symbol in her hand. This is where things start kind of going off the rails for me. And I thought the summoning Savathun and killing Savathun to get even more tribute was pretty cool. That was kind of a neat thing they did. However, after this point, things get a little muddy. So I had no idea what Eris was doing by crushing the symbol. She said that Xivu Arath is banished. I don't know what that means, and that seems like something you should not leave the cutscene without knowing. So then we turn to a radio message with Ikora, and we are instructed to go there, and we get some dialogue from Ikora explaining what exactly happened. And despite the fact that we never talked about this all season, Eris has cut Xivu Arath off from her throne world. That is what she used all of her power to do, becoming the biggest hive god ever, not to kill Xivu Arath, but to cut Xivu Arath off from their home world. Which, first of all, I didn't even know you could do that. Second of all, this wasn't communicated that this was actually the plan this entire time. We really thought we were powering up Eris to actually fight Xivu Arath, I thought. But that is not what's happening here, and now she has lost all of that hive power, I believe. She spent it all on this Throne World Severing connection. The good news is that this should mean that the whole, like, everything you kill just powers up Ziva Arath thing is over. R.I.P. Rasputin, who died to not escalate that. But it appears that Ziva Arath is actually assailable now. There are some indications that we will not fight Zivu Arath before we fight the Witness, meaning Zivu Arath will continue to be a series villain after the Witness. I'm not 100% sure that's true. It is kind of what it sounded like from the dialogue where they said, first we have to take on the Witness, that's the most important thing, but I am not going to rule out Zivu Arath being like a dungeon boss or the boss of the first part of the Lightfall campaign, something like that. I do personally hope that she survives into post-Final Shape content. I do not think it was a great idea to kill all of the villains before we head into there. Which leads me to my next point, which is the fact that Ikora reveals that off-screen, after Savathun was killed by Eris, she was resurrected again by Amaru, and then is walking and talking and strikes a deal where she gives Amaru over as collateral, and then we just let her go wander around and do things. This seemed very, very important, that I would say the most high-profile villain of the entire series was brought back to life and is now out in the wild, and this is relegated to a radio message after a cutscene. Well, I do not expect this entire thing to play out in a very long, no doubt very expensive cutscene, at least showing that she resurrected herself another time, and she does this thing to give Amaru over as a hostage. That really needed to be in the cutscene, because resurrecting Savathun and being like, oh, by the way, she's alive and she left and we have Amaru now, that is really glossing over things. And the radio message is not even enough. Then after that, there's a lore page. And you get the lore page from listening to the radio message, and I didn't even think to look at the lore page until Bife tweeted about it. And then I went and read the wrong lore book, because there's a different lore book that unlocks week to week, and I was very confused. Then I read the right lore book, and it's essentially an extended conversation with Savathun and Ikora about what's going on. This also includes, in addition to the Amaru deal, that she is indicating that we already know how to get through the portal, and that the path will reveal itself, blah, blah, blah. Like, this was her end of the bargain, that she would tell us how to get through. It is not spelled out what exactly this is. I have to believe it's something to do with the Veil. That's something we currently have in our possession. We can visit it anytime we want. It is integral to the Traveler and the Darkness. Like, I fully believe it is something that has to do with the Veil. But yeah, so all of that was jammed in a lore book, which was expanding on a radio message, which was expanding on a cutscene. And I just did not like how this played out. Part of it is presentation. Again, like the Savathun stuff, all of the Savathun stuff really needed to be in a cutscene. An Inkblot cutscene, a normal cutscene, anything like that. But to relegate even the fact that she had been resurrected a second time and is now out in the wild, to put that in a radio message or a lore page is a bad idea. I said in my article today that I think radio messages and lore pages are good for communicating kind of, extra depth around characters, conversations we may not hear, expanding the lore, like kind of there's some funny ones too. It is not good for communicating major plot points. And Savathun being alive is about the most major plot point I can imagine. And so that's why I believe this was not handled very well. And also, the other half of this is I don't think expectations were really managed well. We literally had no indication that the point of powering up Eris to become the most powerful hive god in history was so she could cut off Zivu Arath from her homeworld, or from her throne world. That, I get it. I get why that makes more sense than, the big Mecha Godzilla battle. But that was a very strange way of going about this, and it was not communicated beforehand. So when Eris is sitting there crushing a symbol in her hands, we truly have no idea what's going on. So that made that cutscene end with a bunch of question marks as opposed to yeah, badass, Eris did that thing. So no, I don't like the way this played out. I would say, the end result of this, where Zivu Arath is now vulnerable, Savathun is now roaming around in the wild. We have Maru as a hostage, so maybe he'll have some more dialogue. I'm fine with all of that. I think that is a good place to end up. I just don't like the way it was presented, and it really made the end of the season fall flat for me. We have all this stuff about powering up Eris, and then it just sort of peters out. Like the highlight is her killing Savathun after resurrection, but without knowing Savathun gets resurrected anyway, it doesn't really, land the right way. So that's why I didn't like this. This is a really good season. Otherwise, I stand by all the stuff I said about it previously. It's just that whatever, budget limitations, resource limitations come into play with a seasonal model, that is where the game really suffers. And I said this example in my article where it's like, imagine if Savathun dying and being resurrected by the Traveler and given the light was conveyed in a radio message, or it was in a lore book. That would have been terrible, and the Witch Queen would have lost one of its greatest moments, period. That is essentially what this feels like. It's kind of the same level of being as big of a deal of that, and it's brushed aside because, they didn't have the budget to animate another 30 seconds of cutscene that would have shown Savathun coming back to life, and I do not think that was a good idea. So I get it's kind of a push and pull of resources and narrative, and I really do not envy the narrative team having to balance the demands of trying to tell a good story with gameplay, with budgets, with all of these things, because in a book, you just write whatever you want, and which is why lore pages kind of come so easy, and we can hear so many stories in them. But I think you have to decide when to spend the money, when to go all out, and this was definitely one of those moments. I am hopeful that maybe we see improvement in this in the upcoming, what was it called, chapters? I don't remember. Whatever they're doing the next year, where they did literally say they'd have more cutscenes and stuff like that. So maybe that can help change kind of the narrative stuff, and that's what the game needs. But that is why I'm pretty disappointed with the ending, despite liking the season. Otherwise, I still like the season. I'm going to be playing it a lot more now, because I've finished almost all my games here. Currently reviewing Spider-Man for, was it 2 weeks from now? Something like that. But besides that, that's kind of the last thing I really care about. So yeah, it'll be back to Destiny time for a little bit. Oh, there's a new Diablo season. Yes, I'll be playing that too, and I'll do some videos on that. I have an article going up in 2 hours about some Diablo stuff, so stay tuned for that. That would be, depending on when you're watching this, it is 4 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about everything, and I'm curious to hear your own thoughts, so tell me in the comments, tell me on Twitter. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.